All right, all you people over here. Today I wanted to do a video about Eric Singer. And I never thought much about Eric Singer, but the other day I came across a bit of audio that kind of made me think of Eric Singer in a different way, kind of look at him in a bit of a different light. But we'll get to that piece of audio momentarily. But first I just wanted to say, I never really had a problem with Eric Singer. Excellent drummer, very talented guy, great musician. And I never really, as a Kiss fan, even really had a problem with him wearing Peter's makeup. I know a lot of hardcore Kiss fans have never been on board with that. And personally, to me, it's not as sacrosanct as it is to many other Kiss fans. I mean, Eric Singer, he's a jobbing musician. It's what he does for a living. The opportunity for the gig of the drummer in Kiss came his way. I don't begrudge him taking the job. It just so happened he had to wear Peter Criss's makeup. And, you can't really blame the guy. It's a pretty good gig to get for a drummer. And, I never even really had a problem with him singing Beth, because, that's part of the gig. And I even like that song he did on the album Monster, the one Paul wrote for him, All for the Love of Rock and Roll, where he did the Peter Criss imitation. The only problem I ever really had with him musically is the whole fake piano playing thing during Beth. Now, I don't even know why they ever really came up with this. I'm guessing it was Gene and Paul's idea. It was kind of their way to stick it to Peter Criss to make it look like, hey, Eric Singer can play the piano. Peter Criss could never play the piano. Peter's an untalented buffoon. Look at how talented this guy Eric Singer is, when the fact of the matter is, I don't know if he ever really played the piano. He just went on stage every night and faked it. And that's only the only problem I ever really had with Eric Singer. But before I want to get to that little piece of audio that I mentioned earlier, but before that, we'll do a brief history lesson. Eric Doyle Messinger was born on May 12, 1958 in Cleveland, Ohio. The Mistake by the Lake. He had a brother who was a dancer in the Mark Morris dance group in New York. Eric was inspired by all the usual suspects: The Who, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, the Beatles, drummers like Keith Moon, John Bonham, of course, and even Buddy Rich. He worked at a musical instruments store before becoming a professional drummer. Now, it looks like one of his early gigs was in a Cleveland band called Bo Coo. He was Lita Ford's drummer in the 1980s. Now, in 1985, he joined Black Sabbath. Now, this isn't Black Sabbath Mach 1 or Black Sabbath Mach 2. This was Black Sabbath Mach 4. Now, they shouldn't even have really called it Black Sabbath. It should have been called Tony Iommi and Friends. He played on a record called Seventh Star. 1987, he joined Gary Moore. He formed a group called Badlands with Ray Gillen, who was in Black Sabbath with him, along with former Ozzy Osbourne guitarist Jake E. Lee. He played on their self-titled debut album, but he left the band to join Paul Stanley's solo band in 1989, and there's an interesting story Paul Stanley tells in his memoir, where Eric Carr attended one of Paul Stanley's solo shows, and he saw Eric Singer playing drums, and he had a premonition. He said, that guy's gonna replace me in Kiss. Now, this was a couple years before Eric Carr's death, and he would indeed be replaced by Eric Singer in late 1991. Eric Singer played on the Revenge album and Carnival of Souls, the final sessions, of course, before being replaced by Peter Criss when the band reunited in makeup in 1996. Now, supposedly, If you listen to Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley tell the story, it was Eric Singer in 1995 who suggested they invite Peter Criss to play with them at a Kiss convention, which theoretically wound up sowing the seeds for his own departure in Kiss, because it was kind of started the impetus for the Unplugged thing they did for MTV, which led to the reunion tour. So if you believe that story, Eric Singer actually was the one who provided the impetus for his own firing. But anyways, after the original lineup got together in 96, Singer toured a bit with Brian May. He didn't do much. But I want to get to this piece of audio now, because this is supposedly happened in 1998. Right around the time they would have been finishing up the Psycho Circus album, Ace Frehley's 47th birthday, April 27th, 1998. There's a lady named Wendy Moore who was Ace Frehley's personal assistant at the time. They wound up becoming lovers. They had a relationship, and Ms. Moore recently wrote a tell-all book about her time with Ace called Into the Void, and the audiobook is on YouTube. She's got a lot of stuff in there about Ace's drug use and some of his sexual proclivities, his bisexual tendencies, and there's an interesting thing in there. She writes about Eric Singer on Ace's 47th birthday. Take a listen.
Eric Singer came over to give Ace a birthday present. He got Ace an electronic drum kit. They spent all day setting it up in the living room and playing around with it.
Okay, so it's interesting that Eric Singer would buy Ace Frehley an electronic drum kit for his birthday. But she goes on to talk about how she made birthday dinner for Ace.
It was a good Italian meal and we had tons of leftovers. Throughout the dinner, Ace and I would slip off to the bathroom, one at a time, to do lines. I don't even think Eric knew what was going on.
I actually thought that was pretty funny too, that here they are sneaking off to do lines of blow while Eric Singer's just sitting there playing with his meatballs, not even knowing what's going on, as if he's that naive. But here's a clip I really found interesting. Pay close attention to this.
The dining room table discussion turned to the subject of women and men. Eric got so burned up over the topic it was hilarious. I don't remember exactly what it was that bothered him so much, but he was a little hothead. I think he has some sort of Napoleonic complex.
Okay, so Eric Singer, he's a diminutive little fella, you know, you can hide him behind the drum kit, put him on a 10-foot drum riser, and he looks larger than life, but, you know, I can kind of empathize for Eric, you know, maybe having a little chip on his shoulder for being short.
It was so apparent in the way that he acted, trying to make up for the fact that he's short by talking about women in a very demeaning manner.
Now that's the part I kind of don't get, you know, being demeaning to women. You know, I'm no Gloria Steinem feminist myself, but you know, I mean, what's this all about? The guy has been in rock bands his whole life. I mean, after he got sacked from Kiss, did he go through a dry spell? I don't really understand this. The guy was drumming in successful rock bands his whole life. You know, I don't care how short the dude is. I don't see why he would have any problem getting women. I mean, shit, John Oates talks about the thousands of women he bagged while he was on tour with Hall & Oates. So I don't understand why Eric Singer would have had a problem. I guess maybe once you get sacked from the band, maybe the groupies disperse?
He can be extremely offensive. I tried to ignore him most of the time because I was sure he was looking for some kind of reaction. He always asked me if I had any girlfriends for him who had big tits.
This next part is actually pretty funny.
I wondered why he would want that anyway to redeem himself as a man. A big-breasted woman would only make him look smaller. Eric is your typical male chauvinist pig.
So Eric's a male chauvinist pig, according to this Wendy Moore. I kind of wonder maybe we should take this with a grain of salt. But, after I heard this, then I started thinking, I remembered this video of Eric Singer, where he actually punches a Kiss fan at a meet and greet. So maybe this Eric Singer is a bit of a prick, man. I mean, as far as the male chauvinist thing goes, I mean, it's possible Gene Simmons rubbed off on him a bit, after having been out on the road with him for those years. I mean, Bob Kulick said that Gene and Paul were a bad influence on Bruce, so maybe it was Gene Simmons that turned this guy into such a prick. Interesting stuff, though. But yeah, I never really had a problem with Eric Singer. But this kind of makes me take a look at him in a bit of a different light. I mean, great drummer. He'll never be Peter Criss. I mean, say what you want about Peter Criss's drumming. But, Peter Criss was a founding member of one of the most successful bands of all time. Eric Singer's basically just a jabroni, man, a jobber who joins already successful bands, hops aboard these speeding trains, which is fine. It's a living. He's a talented guy. But Peter Criss, man, founding member of Kiss, he created the Catman, a character Gene and Paul used right up until the end. I mean, what Eric Singer create? Dude's just basically been a replacement, a fill-in, a hired gun, a Peter Criss impersonator. All due respect to the guy. But hey, maybe now that Kiss is done, we'll all get that long-awaited Eric Singer project reunion we've all been clamoring for. Again, say what you want about Peter, but he sang on some iconic songs. Hard Luck Woman, Black Diamond, Nothing to Lose, Strange Ways, the list goes on. Getaway, Hooligan. I mean, he's the guy that brought Beth to the table. Now, we can argue all day about, a guy named Stan Penridge really wrote that song. And, Bob Reznor's the one who really put it together, created the arrangement, the orchestration. But, Peter's the one who sang that melody to Gene Simmons in the back of the limo. Peter's the one that brought that song to the table. So without Peter, Kiss doesn't record Beth. That's a fact. And we can argue how big Kiss would have gone on to be had they not had the big hit with Beth. How big would they have been coming off of that Alive album? My guess is they might have had some moderately successful albums, but that's the song that put them in the stratosphere, and you can't rewrite history. But I really thought this was interesting. Really made me take a look at Eric Singer in a bit of a different light. Never really thought of him outside of the whole musical milieu. Never really took a look at his personal life or really gave it much thought. But hey, maybe we should give Eric Singer the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Maybe he was coming off of a bad relationship. And, maybe he had a negative view of women coming off of a bitter breakup. I think we've all been there. So maybe we should just give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Who knows? It's all hearsay and innuendo. Hope you dug the video. We'll see you next time. Who's here?